Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this UCU webinar about FE Pay and launch of our exciting FE Pay claim and FE Pay campaign. My name is Janet Farrar. I'm President-elect of UCU and I chair the National Further Education Committee. I also work in an FE college, so very busy. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about how this is going to work. So we're delighted to welcome a brilliant panel of speakers. They'll make a lot more sense than I will. Starting with our General Secretary, Jo Grady, and then we've got the Head of FE, Andrew Harden, followed by 3 branch activists who've given up their time to come and talk to us about their own pay campaigns. So we've got Maxine Looby from Oldham College, Stewart Fraser from New College, Swindon, and Helen Kelsall from the Trafford College Group. So we're going to hear from each of the speakers, and then we're going to open it up to questions and contributions. So whichever social media platform you are watching this on, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, you can add any questions that you've got in the comments section there, and then we'll try and get through any that we can in the hour that we have got. This isn't the end of the conversation, though, and I really wanted to make that point. This is very much the start of our pay claim and our pay campaign, and we're really excited about it. But we really want to hear from members and from reps and from branches about their take on it. You know, maybe things that we should be focusing on. So at the end, David is going to kindly put my email address up. So I would encourage you to get in touch with me with any comments or anything that you've got beyond this webinar. So just to give you a little brief introduction, we are in a particularly different place in terms of FE. I wasn't going to mention COVID, but obviously we're in a completely new situation. But actually, financially and in terms of FE, we're in a new situation. We've got a new opportunity with the 400 million that is coming this year. So we really want to kind of raise our ambitions and raise our expectations in terms of what the Association of Colleges will go for, and you know, ultimately how we're going to get that money from the government. So there's never been a better time really to aim high in terms of pay and in terms of funding for our sectors. So the other aspect that is kind of looming over us is the impending white paper that we're expecting at some point before Christmas about FE being brought back under state control and what's that going to mean in terms of pay scales, etc. So there's lots of things that we don't know. So we're going to work with the other bodies and make sure that we're as well informed as we can be as that information comes out. But in the meantime, we really want to get cracking on our campaign. And now that the pay claim has been lodged with the AOC. So we've gone for the hashtag rebuild FE for the start of our pay campaign this time. It's in the very early stages, because we really want to focus on rebuilding the role of FE in rebuilding society. You know, post-COVID, if that's something we can ever imagine, and the importance of FE in terms of retraining people, etc., which has clearly been in the news recently. So the only other thing that you need to know in terms of process, and Andrew will talk you through what, you know, how national collective bargaining works in FE, but really the pay claim document that is going to be made available to you in the comments section it's gone through the democratic processes in UCU. So it's gone through the FE officers, FEC officers, which is me and the 2 vice chairs, and then it's gone to the actual Further Education Committee itself, and we were able to have a discussion about that and how it was framed, etc. So now it's over to you really to see what your take on it is and what you want to see from us as well. Okay, I think I'll stop rabbiting on, and delighted to welcome the General Secretary, Jo Grady, who's going to give us a bit of an introduction in terms of how this fits in with the Fund the Future campaign.
Thanks, Janet. So hello everyone, and thanks for joining us. Before we get cracking, I just wanted to say a few things really, because I think what Janet's just said is absolutely right. You know, there's a lot of challenges coming our way for FE, and we have to be the leading voice in setting the agenda. Nationalisation, as we've said, is sort of looming, but this government has demonstrated that they are clueless about the role of education outside their own limited experience of private schools, boarding schools, Eton and Oxbridge. They do not have a clue about the work that you do, about the work that this sector does, and about the extent to which it is the backbone of communities and of education provision for lots of different people. But we know that, and I think that we are best placed to actually educate people in our communities about that, talk to the press about that, talk to politicians about that, and really, as Janet says, rebuild FE. So this campaign is about demanding that staff are put first in all aspects, because we know when staff are put first, students are put first too, but in particular are put first for the new funding that Janet just talked about, which has been announced. We've really seen the first meaningful injection of cash into a sector that's really suffered massive cuts, particularly in the last 10 years, but obviously we know it predated that too. And it's time for colleges to really put their money where their mouth is and start restoring your pay to pre-austerity levels. So this campaign is about launching a sector-wide campaign in England that as much of that money and funding as possible should be diverted to staff. It's precisely what you deserve. And it's you who've kept the show on the road, whether it's during lockdown or whether it's during the past few years. It's you who students rely upon. And part of this campaign is for us to really reach out to you in your branches, because it's ultimately you who will help make a change. A union is only as strong as its members in branches and activists on the ground. We really need you from the moment this campaign is launching to however it ends in your branch, whether it's lodging a claim, taking part in the ballot, to be talking to your colleagues who aren't in the union, explaining to them why we're lodging a pay claim, explaining to them what this campaign is about, talking to your students. We know whether it's in further education or other sectors where we've taken action, students are key to actually winning a lot of other public support. So on the ground, what you are doing now and from this moment onwards is going to be so fundamentally important. And that often means reaching out to those colleagues who might be anti-union or who don't agree that we deserve more pay. You know, we all hear nobody's getting paid more. Why should we be fighting for better pay? Those are the sorts of people you have to reach out to, in addition to the people who you already know are on your team and agree. Because the more people who take part in a campaign, the more people who bring pressure to bear on employers and on government and on local MPs, the more we get of what we're asking for. So it's really important in these moments now to start building bridges, to start organising, to start having those conversations, and to start bringing people in and with us under the banner of rebuilding FE. And I think that's really, really important. And part of that is to be really explaining that if they don't continue to attract staff of your calibre and actually lose them to other parts of the education sector, we are not going to be able to rebuild either post-COVID or just long-term without a strong functioning FE sector. So how does this relate to our broader Fund the Future campaign? Well, obviously you just cannot continue year in year pay cut in the way that FE has seen. College principals, this government stress how important education is, how important it's going to be post-COVID, post-recession. So now is the time for them to deliver as much for staff as they can. Now is the time for them to deliver for us, but now is the time for us to make that case. And it's in this context really that the FE pay claim is being launched, and it's in this context that the narrative of it really fits with what we're doing across the UK, across all of our sectors as part of the Fund the Future campaign. The message has firmly been that we need to really reassert a lifelong entitlement to education. And that doesn't just mean skills, you know, if you happen to be from a working class background. That means education, and whatever that means to you as a student who wants to access it. And whether that's adult education, further education, education for people who are in prisons or universities. It's about that fundamental right, and it's about fundamentally stressing the importance of that. The Fund the Future campaign was about, or is about, but at the beginning of the summer period during lockdown was about really reasserting that importance to government and to our employers, and pushing forward on this pay claim in England is a big part of that for us. We know, because we see it every day in our working lives, how important education is to those who we deliver it. Whether you're teaching English as a foreign language, whether you're teaching a foreign language, whether you teach a particular skill in your college, whether you are a dyslexia tutor, whatever your particular professional skill is, you know how much those things change lives. And it's really time for us to showcase that. That's what this campaign is about. And really demonstrating that all educational settings, the social and economic health of society and how we educate and treat people is fundamental to that. So I think it's really important for us as educators or people who work in education to be the most vocal advocates of this campaign. As I say, it'll be slightly different in every college, what people are asking for in addition to pay. There will be lots of local issues that you will be able to use to reach out to people, to get people to organise around. I'm sure in your community, as there has been up and down the country, there'll be particular instances of injustice that have been linked to COVID, that may be part of the campaign that you want to run, or other aspects. So one of the really nice things about the rest of this session, because I'm going to stop talking very soon, is the extent to which we've got 3 different people from 3 different campaigns in 3 different colleges that are going to talk through how they ran campaigns in their colleges, how they used issues to reach out to people, and how you can do that too. So even if you're in a small branch, even if you've got a small committee, even if you don't have much experience doing these things, we all have experience talking to people, building networks, building organisation, and communicating why we deserve better, both for us and for our students. So I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who's going to really talk through some particular aspects of the claim for those of you who don't really understand how that works or have never had it talked through to them before. And then we've got Maxine, Stewart and Helen, who are going to talk through their experiences of running campaigns. And then we're going to do the Q&A. So I don't know whether Janet's coming back in or Andrew, but that's it from me.
You can't keep me off this thing, Joe. That's the problem. So I'll just jump in and say thank you so much for that. And it's really important that we've got your full support, which is brilliant. And you've just some things that I wrote down while you were talking in terms of closing the gap with school teachers is something we really want to focus on, because there is a difference in what we do, but it needs the same level of value, and just in general valuing FE's place in education and in society, and the fact that FE does change lives. So I just was kind of throwing my metaphorical pom-poms in the air at that point. So I wanted to mention that. Right. Better stop talking and introduce our Head of Further Education from UCU, Andrew Harden.
Thank you very much.
I'm really sorry about that. I think we're having some technological problems, or more specifically Andrew is. So I think we'll go next, if that's okay, just while we try and sort that out, to Maxine Looby, who is a branch officer at Oldham College and also sits on our National Executive Committee, and she's got some fantastic things to say about their pay campaign. So if we can bring Maxine in next, and then we'll see if we can get Andrew back. Or I'll entertain you in between. Oh.
Hi, thanks Janet for that. Sorry, wasn't quite that prepared coming in straight away, but that's great. Thanks for inviting me on. Obviously, as Janet said, I work in FE and I work at Oldham College, so I've got first-hand experience of some of the issues that are prevalent amongst staff and the institutions that we work in. I think we all know, and I think Joe made a point of saying that FE are not treated with the same respect, I would say, as HE and also schools. You know, we tend to be the poor relations of education, and we bear the brunt of casualised staff and temporary staff and work, you know, in conditions that sometimes are really not acceptable. But we plod on, we believe in what we do, and we know that we offer a lot of learners the stepping stone or the start of a new career, a new life, to move forward. So we put in a lot more than what we get, and it's not reflected in our pay. And this has always been an issue for those of us who work in FE, and it's hardly ever heard and it's hardly ever considered, but it's something that we do need to really get behind and push the government on this, particularly as we know that there is money coming in that's available to FE. FE, as Janet was saying also, it's a gateway. It's a gateway to higher education. It's the gateway to a new career. As we know, with COVID, we can't get away from the fact COVID is here, you know, and jobs will be changing. People will need to upskill. And guess where they're coming to? It's FE. FE is the one that kind of continues to pull back and support where sometimes schools fail, or where we provide that step up to university. So we do need to fight back now. The time is right now. We've been treated like we're nothing for too long, sometimes not even as professionals, and it's time for us to stand up and say no more. It's very important for me because I've worked in FE for a long time, and I see those who have failed at school, sometimes through no fault of their own but the system, and come to get their GCSEs. I've seen those adults who want to upskill and gain new skills. I've seen those who don't have any English at all and come to college to learn English to get a better life. And I've seen those who come to learn vocational skills and have particular needs that support them in upskilling and moving forward in life. But still, tutors and lecturers in FE are on the lowest rung of the ladder. Not acceptable. We know that over the last decade, approximately 24,000 teaching roles have been lost in FE. And that's no surprise, because as a branch organiser, I constantly hear the stories of stress, work overload, low pay, working all weekends, working of an evening, without any recognition for that. And as teachers, we know we have to do that. But on top of that, it should be reflected in our pay some way, somehow, and it's not. You know, FE tutors are overworked, stressed out, burnt out, fed up, often made to feel guilty about the issues of asking for a better pay scale, raising concerns about workload, raising concerns about resources and conditions, you know, and it's kind of put back on us to, or expected to do everything we can with the very limited resources that we have. Now, obviously, that all sounds very negative, but what I want to do as well is to kind of hopefully bring some hope to all those who are out there working in FE and don't know where to go or what to do in terms of trying to make changes within those particular establishments. Now, we ran a campaign that was tied to a national pay claim, I think it was last year, and it was very successful in the sense that the demands that we made, we actually managed to secure quite well. However, there's a lot of work to do when we do that. There's a lot of things that we have to consider. And I did a lot of legwork. You know, I'm talking about steps. If you're talk about counting steps, I'm talking about going into individual staff rooms, finding out what the issues were, understanding the feel of members, what were the things that were making it difficult to do their job. You know, I had to do that and make sure that they were able to voice their concerns and something went with that. Now, in FE, it's very difficult to get large numbers of members together because of the timetables, etc. we work to. And this is where, if you're considering launching a campaign, you need to get as many supporters involved, as many reps as you can to do that legwork. You know, you do have to go in and sit with staff, have a conversation informally, find out where they're up to, what things that they feel disgruntled about, and what we need to challenge and talk to senior managers about. But as I said, within my particular branch, it's an issue that has been going on for a while in terms of pay scales. Another issue I find in FE is that you can go from one establishment to another and the pay scale is quite different. You know, it can be anything from between £5 to £6 difference for doing the same job, which is also not in line with what I would consider a fair reflection of all the work that all FE staff do, all FE tutors and lecturers do. But the background work means making sure that you understand what those local needs are, and wherever possible, when you're putting in it or trying to make a claim, a pay claim, is where you can, is making sure that those local issues are part of that pay claim. For example, some of the issues we had were around the observation of teaching and learning and the way that that was carried out within the establishment. And there were a lot of unhappy members of staff who were under a lot of pressure and staff because of the way that that process was carried out. So we included that in our pay claim. We also made reference to another college who did exactly the same kind of work we did, had more or less the same kind of courses, and they were making probably about £5 to £6 more than what we were, and they were literally down the road from us. So we made a comparison with that college also. They also had additional holidays. I think they had probably about 10 more days annual leave than what we did. So again, we said they are our immediate competitors. How do you feel about the fact that we know people are leaving from this establishment to go to that establishment because they know the paying conditions are better? So we kind of use that as leverage. It takes a lot of negotiating. It takes a lot of bargaining. It means going backwards and forwards. It means consulting with your members, because it's always about the members and what they want. Consulting with them, taking those concerns back to your senior management team, liaising with your regional office, because they can support you through that process, and then going forward from there. But as I said, it's not all negative. It can be done. We managed to secure 5 additional days annual leave. We managed to open the conversation around the observation of teaching and learning process, which is now changing in line with what we were saying for a number of years. And we also managed to secure a 2% pay increase, now, which is not a lot. It started off as 1%. It then went up to 2%, and it's not a lot. But in terms of the fact that, as we've said before, FE is not considered that important, because if it was, they'd be paying us what we were worth. But so in that sense, it was a win for us locally, because it's been years since we've had any kind of recognition for the work we've done, and an additional 5 days holiday and a conversation around one of the most stressful areas of our work, which is observation of teaching and learning, open the doors for us to do that. But I will say there is support out there for you. Talk to other branches, get in touch with people who may have done it or going through with it, get some advice, and also make sure that you speak to your regional officials who can support you on that. But it can be done. It's hard work, but anything that is worth having has to be worked for. And we as a union have to support members into being heard in line with what we feel that we deserve as FE tutors and lecturers. The time is now. We're going through some very difficult times with COVID. People are under even more pressure, expected to do more, produce more, be more. Now is the time for us to stand up and say, we need to be counted as FE lecturers and tutors. We need to be heard, and we're not going away until we are heard and listened to. So hope that's given you some kind of inspiration and the knowledge that with support you can achieve, and hopefully that will steer you on to kind of go back to your branches and talk to members and consider how you can move forward. Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic, Maxine. Thank you so much. I'm sure you've inspired lots of people. You definitely continue to inspire me pretty much every day. And we really appreciate you coming in there last minute you know, when you weren't expecting to come in. So thank you for that. Some really important points there about really and truly engaging with members and not making presumptions about things that we might expect them to want in addition to the pay and the pay claim, and, you know, really consulting them throughout the whole process. I'm really glad that you highlighted that. Also using your local contacts and your local contexts as leverage, I think, is incredibly important. So thank you again. Right, next up we've got Andrew Harden, I hope, on his phone to talk us through the industrial side of this. Andrew, are you with us?
I hope so. Have you got me now? Oh, unfortunately, high definition. Anyway, look, apologies for the IT issues, but actually it fits quite nicely to follow in from Maxine, because I think that kind of slogan that now is the time. It really is the time for FE to make its case. I think that FE's been not well understood by the community and society more broadly in recent years, but now is the time to show how important FE is. FE could never be more important in a time like this. The social and the economic rebuilding that's going to have to follow the COVID-19 crisis gives us a real moment of opportunity to make the case for FE in a way that I think will be more broadly understood. So now is the time. The other thing to remember is in the last 3 or 4 years, we have had no disagreement from the Association of Colleges, who represent colleges across England, that pay is a problem and that pay in FE is not fair. And that there is a big pay difference between people who teach in schools versus people teaching the same things in FE. So there's no disagreement nationally from the employers. The other thing that makes this year particularly different, on top of the COVID-19, is that £400 million has landed in colleges' pockets this year. Whether it be, some of it is funding around different infrastructure projects and whatever else, but at least half of it has gone into baseline funding for 16 to 19-year-olds. And that means that colleges can spend it as they wish. And when we went out campaigning with them, it was always on the basis, when we marched down the street, that they would put staff first in line for any extra money. So together we've won extra money, and this is the year, they told us last year, this is the year when the money arrives. So there's every reason for every branch to have confidence that we should be getting something much more significant this year than we have had in more recent years. So if I just move on to the boring stuff, which is to sort of explain the mechanics of the way pay bargaining works in FE England, it's not, we've been saying for many years, it's not meaningful bargaining. And what we mean by that is that we go and we meet with the employers, the Association of Colleges, and after the end of the discussions that we have, they make a recommendation. And that's all it is. It's a recommendation. So unlike in HE, where whatever is decided nationally is implemented in every university, that's not what happens in FE. So the Association of Colleges make a recommendation, and then we have to have the argument again locally in colleges to make sure that they implement the recommendation. And back in 2008, a long time ago, the highest level of implementation was 66% of colleges followed what the national position was. More recently, it's down to about 30%. So this is why we are focusing today on submitting the national claim locally, because the reality is, whatever the outcome of those national talks are, we have to have the discussion again locally. We have to convince the employer locally to implement the national recommendation. Now, we may or may not agree with the national recommendation, and we have examples, and some of them this evening and others as well, where we win better pay increases by having that local discussion. So what we are urging branches to do is to put a little bit of heat under the feet of the national discussions by submitting the national claim locally, together with the local elements, as Maxine was talking about, whether it be lesson observations, whether it be workload, whether it be annual leave, whatever it is. Put the national claim in locally, which this year is for a significant pay increase to reverse the effective pay cut over a decade of below inflation pay increases. Submit that locally, and off the back of whatever we achieve nationally, it may not be implemented everywhere, but if you are exercising members, getting members behind the national claim, but also bringing in stuff that is of concern to them locally, they will be more interested in it. It won't be some remote thing that happens somewhere in London and nobody ever listens to. It becomes more real, and it helps build the union and build support for the union and build support locally. So that's what we're urging branches to do, and we'll be providing support in terms of template claims, and this will not be the last webinar. We will have future webinars that help talk branches through the step-by-step how you submit a claim, what it looks like. But I think tonight the most important thing is, this afternoon, most important thing is to listen to a couple of case studies from branches who might not necessarily have seen themselves as the ones that would be out there putting in a claim and taking action and doing that kind of stuff. We can hear some really good stories. We've heard one already from Maxine about how you can get results by submitting a claim locally. And we've got a couple more to listen to. It doesn't always involve action, sometimes it does, but it's all about building support behind the union amongst members about things that they really care. And that's what we should be doing as a union, representing what they really care about. So that's enough for me at the moment. I'll hand over to the following speakers. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Andrew. That's absolutely brilliant. It does feel like night time here. It is going dark. So, just in summary, now is the time. And, using the fact that employers are in agreement that we need better pay in FE and that we need better funding in FE. So just using that to our advantage. So thank you very much for laying all of that out. Okay, so our next speaker is Stewart Fraser, who is from New College, Swindon. So I'll wait for him to come on the screen, then I'll go away.
Hi, thanks. There we go. Thanks, Janet. Hi, evening, everybody. Thanks for having us on. I'm going to make some similar points probably to Maxine and build a little bit on some of those points in our own pay campaign back in 2018. And we're certainly one of those colleges that Andrew was referring to. We totally unexpected that we ended up being one of the 6 branches that got through the 50% threshold and actually took some action. And for us as new officers at the time, or relatively new officers, we think we've been in post for about 2.5, 3 years. It was a pretty steep learning curve, but it just showed us what was possible, really. The key thing, I think, from what Maxine was saying and what I would stress as well is the involvement of your members and the engagement of members in the process. Our college traditionally was quite safe, and we would have a few people would come and join us on 2 or 3 of us would take action on national campaigns, and I think management realized that, and we were kind of building. There was a building up, if you like, in terms of a number of years of below inflation pay awards, sometimes no pay award, whilst at the same time the college's finances were looking rather healthy and becoming healthier year by year, up to around £8 million in the bank, and staff were beginning to get a little bit agitated around that. And where was that money? Where was that money coming from? What was it being built on? And it was being built on the back of the efforts of staff, and in turning the college's students into successful university applicants, into successful members of the workforce. And the college's attitude was kind of the opposite to the way Maxine's branch approached it. Whenever we brought this up with the college, we had pretty good pay scales, we had pretty good holiday. Their response was, well, if people don't like it, they can always move on. And eventually that wears thin. And so there was a real sort of groundswell of opinion amongst members that this was a time to do something. Allied to that, there was a change of principle, and we thought this would be a good opportunity to actually take some action and to see what we could do. And again, this is where that local claim is important, and with a lot of help from the regional office as well. It was about looking at what can we do around a local claim which actually does engage members and makes members feel really part of what we're actually trying to achieve. And that was something, I think, which is really important for me, because when you're going around talking to members, they need to feel that this is about them. It's not about just 2 or 3 officers who are on a bit of a crusade and seeing what they can do from there. And what we were able to do from there was really kind of build a bit of momentum. Now, we're a relatively small branch. We had 84 members at the time. And so it was quite straightforward. I say quite straightforward. Again, the legwork comes into it. You go around, and I think people must have felt I was stalking them at times, because you said, you voted yet? Well, you're gonna, what do you think about this? Well, and you're constantly trying to get people involved. What we decided to do was we asked for people who wouldn't mind being our staff workroom reps, so that we could communicate with them, and they could then just sort of pass messages around the workroom, not just to members, but also people who other non-members so that they know what's going on, and you can build a bit of interest and awareness around there. And again, it's just another way of involving people. We're not asking them to give up huge amounts of time. We're just asking them to post messages in their workroom. But sometimes it saves you a bit of job, and sometimes but it also means that members feel that, you know, they're willing and they're able to get involved in that. In terms of the process and getting the vote out was really important. The 50% threshold, I think, was something that we were very acutely aware of as being important, and making sure that we got as many people to vote as we could. And that was, again, made a little bit easier, like I said, because we've been on one site, but also things like checking your membership lists. We had people still on our lists who had left and, you know, obviously hadn't updated their membership, so we were able to take those out who weren't eligible to vote, and that made a bit of a difference in so much as the number of people we needed to get across the threshold when we finally got there. We also sort of, once the voting had started, we would be sort of emailing people, can you let us know if you voted, just so we have an idea as to how many people voted. And as we got close to the end of the ballot period, we knew we were near 50% in terms of a turnout. What we weren't quite sure of was, were we going to go through the 50% barrier with a yes vote? And then you get that panic as the realization hits when the results come out. You're reading it and you're thinking, oh, only 6 branches have made it. Well, that's not going to be us. And you're looking at it, and I read it about 3 times, I think, before I thought, oh my Lord, it is us. We've got to do something now. And there's that real kind of panic. And again, this is where your regional office is important. And, you know, using the regional office, using their experience, and you don't actually realize, it doesn't seem quite so daunting, because you realize there are people out there who can help you as well. And again, still the involvement of members in that. This was still a case of making sure you keep those communication channels open to members, letting them know what the plan, you know, what you're planning, what your thoughts are, and how can you involve them. You know, we were geared up, we weren't geared up at all to take strike action. Within 2 weeks, it comes round and very quickly you're saying, right, here we go, we're out, and we're on the picket line. So we put rotas in place. We asked staff to commit what time they could. You know, we knew that some of our staff, you know, travel 1.5 to 2 hours to get to work. You know, we're not anticipating everybody to sort of come and join us on the picket line. And people felt, I think, that we were working with them, and they were happy to work with us. And I think that was a real key message that ended up being sent to the employer. Going back to what I was saying at the start, the attitude of the employer was, well, yeah, okay, take it or leave it, but we know when push comes to shove, you're going to be 2 or 3 of you are going to take action, and nothing, you know, there's going to be no major disruption to the college at all. In the local press, the college estimated that there were 50 staff taking action. Our estimate was closer to 60 to 65 taking action. We had 3 departments that were closed and had to send students home because there was no teachers, they couldn't teach. And there was a real kind of sense that I think the college were taken by surprise. And that message was how, you know, when we go back and we start talking to the employer, they know that we've got that membership behind us. And that's really crucial. If you need to take the membership with you, because when you're talking and you know that you've had 60 or 65 people who are willing to take action, the employer knows that as well. And that starts to look at what they're going to do around how can they deal with that situation. And some of the things we did around were the local claim, and we again managed to get some small little wins. We're still working on a couple of little things from that as well, so it's not a case of we did that and everything was hunky-dory. We're still working on a few things, but we managed to get a reduction from a 10-point pay scale to an 8-point pay scale. We did get an additional percentaging, a 1% pay increase to the 1% that we'd already been offered. But the sort of crucial thing here was we actually, this was the issue that really was engaging most members. We had a pay gateway halfway up our pay scale, where you had to, in order to get through that gateway, you had to show competency and the fact that you were striving towards excellence in the Ofsted terms, in order to get through that pay gateway and then access those higher strands of our scales. We managed to get that suspended in the first instance, and that was huge. I mean, this was an issue that was causing a lot of stress for many members. There was one member in particular who had not even applied to go through the gateway, and they'd been stuck on the same salary point for up to, I think it was 4 years, because they didn't want the stress of having to put together their pay gateway application. And they were just happy. They weren't happy, but they just thought, I'm just going to stay. I'm not going to try I'm not going to try even. And so these were the issues that really started to engage members. And we got the gateway suspended, and straight away for some people that's an increment of nearly £2,000. So it's not just the percentage increase which was there. We managed to take two of our lower scale points out. We managed to create a progression route for people at the midpoint of the scale. And once that was there, it was still important that you keep the branch involved. So we took the first 2 days of action, and we were really, as I say, really surprised, but also really pleased with the support we had from members. In the lead up to the second 2 days of action in the January 2019, we were all set to go on strike again. We started to have a couple of wobbles. People were saying, well, we've made our point in that first 2 days. Do we really need to take 2 more days of action? We're getting close to GCSEs and revision and mocks and things like that. And right at the death, I get a call from the principal saying, can we have a meeting about your strike action? And it's at that point that they start to make some of these concessions. And you then have to make a decision, bearing in mind what you think might be the best thing to do. It may not be necessarily always the thing you want to do, but something which was the best thing to do. We knew what our members were saying to us. We knew that some of them were a little bit iffy about taking further strike action. So we went and agreed to suspend our strike action on that right then. And by sort of like last minute, I'm talking at 5:25 on the night before the action was supposed to take place. We then have to communicate around to the members to say that we've suspended action. And again, that's where those workroom reps are really useful, because they've got contact details for people in their workroom. Sometimes you haven't got the time to go trawling through your member contact lists. And then from there, we have a meeting, and there's a kind of an element of trust between us as the officials of the branch and the members, that we were going to do the right thing for them, and the members were going to be there and support us. And from there, we've kind of, as I say, we're still working on the pay gateway. We know that's going to come back in some way, shape or form, because the college has just merged. So we know that there are going to be different fights to be had. But on the basis of what we did a couple of years ago, we now feel as a branch, and we're looking at becoming a merged branch if possible, but that's a kind of different story. But we feel that our experiences now from there put us in a stronger position when we go in towards details now about harmonisation and contracts and all the other issues that are going to come up as a merger. And management also know that we're in that position, and it sends a strong message to them that we're not going to be messed about. And if you're not going to listen to us, then we are prepared to take action. And I think that's the key thing that came through to me, is that it's not about you as an individual officer. Think about how you can engage those members, and the way in which you do that is you go and speak to them, like as Maxine was saying, you go and find out what's on their mind. And because that local claim was really, really crucial in terms of getting the members on board, selling the message to them, and then also being able to take that message to the employer. And eventually, we got some good wins on that. I think that's all I'm going to say at the moment. I think, obviously this is the time, as people are saying, we're on the back of a huge kind of crisis pandemic. We're working, and I'm sure everybody is working the same as we are. I don't know anybody in here at the moment who's not already said, blimey, it's only lunchtime on Monday, when's the weekend? Because, this is the time to go and energize people and try and show them that you're with them and you're prepared to fight with them and prepared to fight for them.
Absolutely, Stewart. Thank you so much. It was really interesting to hear that perspective. Obviously, we heard from Maxine about the negotiating table, and to hear about your industrial action and how successful it was gave us a really interesting perspective. And just to reflect on a couple of things that you said, the arrogance of an employer to say that if people don't like it, they can move on. Well, frankly, there isn't any FE without the staff. So I'm not sure they'd want to test that theory out. And, some really important messages there about empowering members to be involved, it not just being the reps who are having to, do all of the legwork and get the vote out, using your members and making them understand that that's for their benefit. You're not asking a favour of them. It's for a good reason. Before I bring Helen in, I'm just going to remind everyone, if you want to ask any questions of the panel or make any comments, be nice. But, if you want to make any comments, that's fine too, of the panel or of me or Joe or Andrew, then we should have a bit of time at the end. So just use whichever platform you're using. Okay, so thanks again to Stewart, and I'll bring in Helen Kelsall, who is from Trafford College Group and also sits on UCU's National Executive Committee.
That sounds really impressive. That I've been sitting on the National Executive Committee. I've had one meeting, so I'm just about getting used to that. Yeah, so I'm Helen Kelsall from Trafford College, and for those of you who don't know, Trafford College is in the south of Manchester. It's a relatively leafy suburb. And as a branch goes, we've got quite a lot of members, but we're not what you'd call a militant branch. However, the drip of austerity and the inability to do what you want to do in the classroom with the students at the weekend because you're so tired after a week working was obviously beginning to get to people. So last year, when we put the 1920 pay claim in, which was, I don't know whether you remember, it was a pay rise and holidays. So holidays were on the table. We put in a Part 2 pay claim along with that. Now, Trafford College had just merged with Stockport College, so we're now the Trafford College Group, which was Trafford and Stockport College, and there was a number of issues about harmonisation. So as well as the national claim, we put harmonisation on the table and we put workload on the table. And it's quite interesting when I was listening to Stewart, and Stewart was talking about building the confidence of the branch officers and building the confidence of the members, that when you say something, you're actually going to do it, and it's not just like big talk that's going to end in nothing. And the Part 2, if you're picking realistic Part 2 pay claims, you're demonstrating to your members, this is actually worth it because we're actually going to make a difference. So pay negotiations, and we got a 1% pay rise. It's not brilliant, but it's better than a kick in the teeth. And we got that in August, and there was an agreement that we would review that later on in the year, depending on student numbers. But what this meant is it kept the negotiations going, the discussions kept going. And while you're discussing and while you're negotiating, there's a chance that you can make a difference, that things come up. The conversation is a good process to be involved in. So we actually, the harmonisation, we also won harmonisation of pay scales and access to the top 2 points of the pay scale. So it's like Stewart was saying, it's not always about a pay rise. Yes, we want a pay rise. However, members further down the pay scales benefited significantly because the harmonisation between the Trafford College and the Stockport College, we harmonised up. So people got a little increment then. Access to the top 2 points of the pay scale is a considerable pay rise. So while not perfect, if you're sitting at the top of the scale, the Trafford College scale, you got 1%, but people further down the pay scales got significant increases. And that's because we put it on the table. If we'd not had these discussions, when we initially brought this to the table, the plan was no pay rise, so and we got it on the table. We also got additional holidays, like Maxine was saying, on the table. And we're still in discussion about that. And we've got a reasonable amount of holidays anyway. But we were discussing it last January, and then COVID happened, and so we kind of lost out about that in the health and safety nightmare that is COVID. But holidays are still on the table, so we're still discussing to improve our holidays and workload. And again, it's not massive wins, but it's small wins. We're looking at having 1 day per term as a marking day, or a day where staff can can catch up. So it's not storming the barricades and breaking into the Bastille, but it's chipping away, and it's demonstrating to your members that you can have these small wins, that you can. And when I say you, I don't mean you, I mean they can have these small wins. We can get involved in this. We can do this. Those of you that have got teaching, learning, and observation issues, get it on the table and put it as part of your part two pay claim. Because if the managers don't want to discuss it, this is a good way to get it on the table, make it part of the discussion, and actually make a difference to people's lives. When Stewart was talking there about the stop halfway up, that's a massive issue for people. It makes people miserable, and and that's what trade unionism is about, isn't it? It's about making people's working lives a better place. So we got harmonisation. We've got the workload. There's still quite a lot of discussion going on about that, and there's holidays, which again was held back because of COVID, but there's discussion going on there, and we're going to make a difference. We're going to do stuff that actually makes a difference, and while we're doing that, we're building the membership, we're building the base, we're talking to people. The holidays, there's a couple of options with the holidays, and we've put it out into a Microsoft Forms question, and we've probably got about 160 members-ish in the branch, and we've had a response on that, and the response is over 50% of the members. So when I'm going in to discuss the holidays, I can mention that I've had over 50% of the members replying to the forms. That 50% rings a bell, doesn't it? The 50% is the key thing. Bing, 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 50%. So if we can get 50%, or over 50% of our membership to engage on this question, what's going to happen when we move forward into discussions about pay? And I'm not going to go on about this because Maxine and Stewart have made excellent points. We are underpaid. We know we are. We're here because we love it. We're here because we care, and that is being taken advantage of. Our commitment and our caring is absolutely being exploited, and we need to be there. Put in a Part 2 pay claim. Do it, because you can get small wins, small victories that change people's lives, that makes people's working lives a better place to be. That's a real start, and then we can build on that, and we can start looking at those pay claims, because as everybody said, the time is now, and we need to be getting on, and we need to be moving with that. I think that's just about all I've got to say. I'm coming in under time. Ha ha ha, all those people that said I can't come in under time. I think I have done. Put your Part 2 pay claim in, people. Janet.
Thank you, Helen. I would never suggest that I had any anxieties about you keeping within time. That was well within time. So thank you so much for that, and a brilliant contribution. And I really would like to thank all of our speakers for a really excellent discussion, real food for thought. Okay, well, we've not been overwhelmed with questions, but just a reminder that we do want to hear from you, so this isn't the end of the conversation. So please do get in touch, and I'm going to ask David at the end to share my email address. So do let me know any thoughts that you've got. In the meantime, as you can see, I'm joined back by Joe and Andrew, which is fantastic. And I think Joe would like to say a few words about the only thing that is on my mind at the minute, which is Jane McAlevy's Strike School.
Yeah, and actually I feel like Helen was the perfect introduction to talking about some of the principles of Strike School, because I think obviously this event is about the FE pay claim in England. So that is what we're talking about, and obviously that's what this campaign is going to be about. But the lessons that all of the speakers, but given Helen just spoke then, that all of the speakers have been trying to impart are completely about how we build and organise for power all the time, and how that isn't just an activity that we engage in when we expect or want members to put in an X in a ballot for us or to attend an event, that it is an ongoing activity all the time. And that doesn't mean it has to be arduous or, you know, it has to be really difficult, because actually if we want the best for ourselves and we want the best for our students and we actually want to transform the society that we live in line with the principles that most of us have, which is why we're involved in education in some way, then actually figuring out what you want, getting space to do that, small wins on a regular basis that, you know, okay, if you're sort of thinking, as this campaign is about pay and its erosion over a decade and longer, that seems like a huge thing to address all in one go. But if you think about all the little incremental things that pass you by at work, that you're too exhausted sometimes to combat, or that cumulatively make work really unpleasant, find which one actually people really want to campaign on, find an issue that people can really get behind. And that can be, I don't want to use a kind of language of like a gateway issue, but that can be an issue to really actually get people galvanized and to really tap into what it is that unites us all in work, and why actually the union is the best vehicle for people to understand and kind of drive their interest, because that is the only thing that will work in the workplace. People on the ground deciding what it is that concerns them and coming together and finding a way that they're going to drive forward and resolve that together. So what we've been doing with Strike School, for those of you who might be aware, Jane McAlevey is a globally renowned organizer, and she is, we're nearly towards the end of it, which is very sad, but she's been running a 6-session organizing school for UCU members, but also for thousands of other trade unionists globally. And it's been very much about encouraging groups of members from branches to come together, study the school as a group, so that when they go back into their colleges and their branches, they're kind of better placed to organise. As I say, this one is nearly coming to an end. We've had loads of FE members involved in it and prison members as well. There's due to be another one next year. We are told spring, but we haven't had the dates confirmed yet. We put 400 activists through this strike school. It's more than any other union that's enrolled in the strike school. We account for 10% of all students enrolled on it. I want to see even more than 400 people on the next one. So if you've been inspired by the kind of language and the kind of organising that we've introduced you in this session, this is not just about the England FE pay claim. This is just one way of getting involved. But I know, Janet, you've been even had a group, haven't you, in the session? So I don't know if you wanted to say anything about it.
Thanks, Jo. Yeah, I mean, lots of the things that you just said, I've been facilitating one of the groups, and it's just been so interesting. And part of it is working with international groups as well. So hearing from people outside of not just, you know, unions in this country, international unions, it's incredible, you know, it's that, and we can learn you know, lessons from the metal workers in Nigeria. Like, there's absolutely no reason why not. It's the same principles. So from an FE point of view, you know, I would echo exactly what Jo has just said. It's all about bringing our members with us, which has been a theme that has been running through today, and about empowering our members and, you know, making them understand that it's for their own benefit, that we're, you know, perhaps giving them a push towards doing things, but ultimately it's got to be all hands on deck if we get these changes that we want, you know, and it's about aiming high in terms of, you know, not kind of scraping through thresholds with 55%, but getting every single person on board. There's loads of, I mean, I could literally talk about it all night, so I'll try not to, but, you know, just loads of really practical stuff, like things like majority petitions, where, you know, you ask somebody to sign something on the proviso that their name and their photograph will only be shared if they reach 70% of staff on that petition. You know, it's those kind of practical things that we need to start bringing in, so that people don't feel that they're alone when they're tackling these things with the employer. Okay, pause for breath, Janet. Andrew, is there anything that you would like to add before I sum up here?
I mean, really, just to reinforce the enthusiasm behind the strike school. I haven't been involved. I've now got FOMO, fear of missing out. So I'm definitely going to be involved the next time around in spring. I think it really is important to the way that we, you know, build our ability to negotiate and bargain with strength and power. That's what it's really about at the end of the day. But the only other thing to really echo again is what Maxine was saying, is that the time is now. We've got more money in FE, and we can't let them off the hook. That was announced last year, but it's arrived on the 1st of August this year. We can't let them off the hook. There's more money there. We've got to get as much as we can into our members' pockets. That's why we're a trade union. So let's feel confident about our ability to deliver this year and do everything that we can, and we will support you in every way that we can.
Yeah, I think if I just add one thing to Janet before we pass back to you and finish up is, Andrew's completely right. And I think in England, the sort of moral bankruptcy of this government's education agenda has never been more stark. You know, we saw, I know for many of us, the mask's always been off, but we saw the mask was off over the way in which they treated our students at A-level. We've seen the way in which, you know, the dereliction and the dismissive nature of FE and its contribution to this country over years, but particularly now. We've been the ones that communities and students have trusted throughout all of this to do the right thing. And I think we have a really strong position now to take that forward and be really kind of righteous in our campaigning.
Thank you, Jo. Thanks, Andrew, as well. And I really must say thank you to the panel and to the three activists who I'm sure have had a very long day and joined us, given up their time to join us. So we really appreciate that. Of course, they're doing it for themselves, if I was using my strike school language, so maybe I shouldn't thank them. I don't know if we've just got time, if David's able to share the big reveal of the poster that is the starting point for our campaign. Hopefully you can see that. The tagline we've gone with is #RebuildFE. The clue is in the hashtag. Please do, when we launch it properly, please do share widely on social media and continue to use that hashtag. And as you can see, it's about investing in our staff, in our communities, and in our future. And ultimately, that does sum up where we're coming from. So also, David will have shared the actual link to the pay claim, so you can have a read of it. And that's the actual claim that has gone to the employer, so you will know where we're coming from in terms of a move towards full restoration. So thank you so much for your attention, and go out there and win some money for your members. Cheers, everyone.